So what flavors do we have? We briefly discussed this already. So we have these online GPS loggers, which are very nice and very fancy and very expensive to use and have a very limited battery life, but they're, that's a trend that we see going on. There's a lot of demand for these kind of loggers. And on the bottom end, we have the USB loggers or the dongle loggers, the old-fashioned ones, the AntTails, that people still use in the majority of cases that they do shipments, but they have a lot of, downside in when you're talking about connectivity and also intermediate checks and also cloud access of those loggers without human interaction. So, and in the middle we have something what we call the Bluetooth low energy loggers, which have I think a bit of an optimum between the two. So they do have this wireless connectivity that doesn't require human interaction. They do have a possibility for remote access, and they do have a possibility for a remote release of shipments, but all at a very much more cost-effective price point. So, talk about online. So what is nice about online? It's just, with a smartphone, it's the same thing. You have all these functionalities that are basically on the pallet. That's where they're used now. So you have connectivity, so you have more control, you have GPS position, you can see where something is, you can alert if something goes wrong. And so you can easily release a shipment remotely without having anybody of your organization on site. So that's all very positive. But of course there are downsides because there's a modem in there that uses a lot of battery because it uses a lot of energy. So you have a big device because it needs to last for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. But another disadvantage of having something that uses a lot of energy, it also creates a lot of heat. So if you create heat, your temperature readers are going to be off. So you need to solve the problem or between creating heat and accurate temperature readings. So that's something you need to be aware of, and that needs to be factored in the firmware, that if you are trying to connect, that you shouldn't do any temperature reads, because then your temperature reads are going to be off. So that's, it's fixable, but you have to take care of that. Another problem is there's a lot of countries, or not a lot, but there's some countries where it's very problematic to get your expensive device back. So then it's going to be a one-way shipment. So it's going to be a single-use device, and then the cost is going to be very high. So you have to cater it in for the business case. So you need to be able to figure out a way to either have a very organized reverse logistics, or just basically calculate that you're going to lose 25% of your expensive hardware. Another thing is the battery life is limited. So when the battery is dead, you don't have temperature readings either. So then your whole shipment will be disqualified if it gets stuck in customs or whatever. And then all of a sudden, your modem has used all of the battery power, and then you also run out of temperature logs, which can be very costly, because then you have to resend that whole shipment. So basically, that's not a real optimum solution. What we consider the optimum solution is the Bluetooth low energy way to do it, because you have a lot of the same arguments in favor, like more control, even with the boxes closed, because you have access to the sensor in the box without opening it. You do have alerts also with intermediate reads, because you know where something is and you know what alarm profile is used. So that's also a good point. And when you alert something or someone, that there's also a possibility to intervene and to actually take action to move a box into a cold storage when it's sitting outside for too long, or do any other form or sort of action. The same goes for remote release. The software that AntTail has is totally secure. So even if your customer scans the box, the whole integrity of the data that is processed in the back office, in the cloud, so to speak, is totally secure and cannot be altered or manipulated by the people who receive the shipment. So you can do a remote release without having somebody of your own organization in place. So that's also a very big benefit. Another thing we do is we just keep a total audit trail of all the interactions that have taken place with that box. So if somebody scans it, that's logged. If it's scanned by a gateway, it's logged. So you can actually see where that has happened. If people use a smartphone, we just get the GPS of the smartphone. And if it's a fixed location, we actually know where a certain gateway is. So we know where that box has been. A big plus of this is that because of the low cost of the BLE sensor, you have a much easier business case. You don't need to do reverse logistics. You can, but if you don't lose a lot of money. So that's very easy. The temperature readings are very accurate, and you have an excellent battery life. And because of the way we set up our firmware, you never lose a sample, because as long as there's battery life, the sensor keeps storing samples. So there's no start or stop button, so you never run the risk of somebody forgetting to do a manual action and that you end up with a shipment with no data. And another big plus is because we evaluate all the alarms in the back office, we can change alarm profiles fairly easily, because we don't do alarm evaluation on the sensor, but we do it in the back office. So all the sensors are reusable with different alarm profiles. So you can just use, mix and mingle them. So you don't need to do order 102 different spec AntTails because you want to prevent false positive alarms. And so is there no more business for USB then? Well, my feelings are that in 2026, the year we talked about, that they have mostly been made obsolete, because the arguments in favor of cheap and good BLE data loggers is so clear that I think large pharmaceutical companies will all change the USBs into BLEs. So basically, they are still the majority of the loggers used, but they're becoming obsolete. It's old technology, and actually they have more disadvantages than advantages, apart from the fact that it's written down in all the SOPs that are commonly used in the pharmaceutical industry. So to make a long story short, BLE is the way to go. You can do remote reads up to 100 feet away. It's fast. You can do one gateway or one smartphone with over 250 sensors, so that's no problem. And you can even use multiple gateways if you really have a high density population of sensors. So if you have to process thousands of sensors very fast, you can use 3, 4, or 5 gateways. It doesn't really matter. As soon as you turn one on, it automatically starts synchronizing data for you. So you don't need to configure anything. It basically works straight out of the box, plug it in, no buttons, and it works. So what does this all come down to if you want to look at costs and benefits? Online is fantastic if you want to have online control all the time. Online control doesn't really mean that if you get an alarm that you can actually do something about it, but at least you know. With Bluetooth, if you get the alarm, there's somebody near, so you can actually have access to your shipment and actually do something about it. So it's not as good as online, but it's still way more than you have with the USB or dongle solution. Early alerting is possible. Remote release, that's something people really like about the online solution, but it's also very possible with our Bluetooth solution. We don't have online GPS. We have GPS as soon as somebody reads with a smartphone, then we just harvest the GPS position of that as well. And we have a complete audit trail of all the interactions, so we can see who has interacted with that box at what time. Our temperature accuracy is fantastic, and we can also monitor whether or not boxes have been opened en route. So we have an excellent way to detect counterfeit or theft, which is a very good way to secure your supply chain. The battery life is fantastic. So we have a little battery, the CR2032, that lasts about 18 months. And it's also now possible to monitor down to minus 35 with that. So that's a great addition to our portfolio. And the other one is that we have our sensor memory is 2 years. So we have over 200,000 data points in memory, so we can have a sensor sitting in a warehouse for 6 months that has not been synchronized to our back office, and then we just you scan it or you put it near a gateway, and it will synchronize its data in a matter of minutes, and you have 6 months of data in your back office. No problem. So this is basically the short version. So if there are any questions, I'm very sure that Lauren will be very happy to answer them. You can reach him at info@assetmonitoring.net or check his website. There's that nice movies on there from Uruguay where you can see how easy it is to set up a COVID distribution using the AntTail solution. And if it needs be, Lauren will put you in touch with me, and we can discuss the solution further. Thanks very much.